Hello, everyone. Ian Hamilton here with Good Virtual Reality, and I'm joined by Ryan Engle at Golf Plus. Why don't you say hi there, Ryan?
Hey Ian, great to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. And I've been watching what you've been doing for years now, and it's been a really interesting project. You've got, did you say it was 50 courses now represented across Golf Plus?
Yeah, that's right. I believe we might be at 51 now. We're launching another course on Wednesday. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun adding to the course library and getting some pretty cool real world golf courses out there.
So, why don't you break it down for me? What is sort of your idealized fan, and how do they find Golf Plus, and then how do they use it?
Totally. Yeah, so at the beginning when we launched, we were kind of thinking this would be a great way for people new to the game of golf to be introduced to golf in a much friendlier way than it happens in real life, in a much more affordable way than it happens in real life. And as we got going, what really surprised us is the most engaged users were people who golf quite a bit, not necessarily just new golfers. They're actually, call it, your average golfer that happens to be sort of, more tech forward, that happens to be a bit younger than the average golfer. Average golfer might be closer to, 50s or something like that. Whereas our average player is about 35, 35-year-old male is kind of the average for us. And the more we kept going down this path and developing new features and everything like that, each feature that we developed that was more focused on, kind of call it, a more casual golfer didn't do as well as the stuff that was very focused on real golfers and golf enthusiasts. So that was a big learning for us, and especially with, course sales and our Golf Plus Pass, which gets you access to all the courses. The folks spending money after the initial purchase were considerably more interested in golf, and definitely more real world golfers. So when we look at the people kind of playing on a monthly basis, and especially the people that are actually spending money in the platform, it's like over 80% are golfers, and that's been something that we've learned, and now we kind of double down on that, and we really do our core customer to be a real life golfer that's just looking to find ways to play more golf.
There's so many analogs across the market to this behavior pattern. H3VR is kind of like the gun range, and a whole culture around the hobby of owning a gun and getting virtual time out on the range. And then you've got just so many other examples of these hobbies that you now get to expand on inside virtual reality. So I've seen some tests over the years, but do you have the sort of experience live now where golfers can play 18 holes while watching, like it's streaming in a window, or they follow along in some way like that?
Yeah, so we do have a built-in media player, which is really just a web view with some controls that makes it a little bit easier to like play content. So you can log into whatever streaming service you use to watch sports, to watch golf, and watch golf on a floating screen while you're playing the same course, which is super cool. We don't have any sort of integrations currently where you actually like see the player's shots happening in front of you, in VR. We do have the tech to do that, and we've done some prototyping there. It's kind of a pretty heavy lift to get it all working in real time. And we just haven't prioritized it. So there's a lot more potential than what we're currently doing, but at least at face value, when there is like a tournament happening on Saturday or Sunday, if we have that coursing game, then we're going to see a lot more usage and a lot more people playing on that specific course, and just general sort of increase in daily active users when we have the same course that's being played on TV.
Got it. And then, so walk me through the decision to launch on Quest and then what you're looking at now for expanding the platform.
Yeah, so we launched in 2020. So that was when the Quest 1 was really the only standalone headset available as far as I know, or at least the only one that, people were really using. So that was kind of a no-brainer to launch on Quest back then. And then obviously over the years, there have been other platforms that came about. I guess PSVR 1, maybe it was around back then. If not, it was kind of around shortly after that. Um, but we had talked to a bunch of other devs who kind of did the work there, and they said getting approved and getting set up on, PSVR was quite a bit of work and not necessarily worth the lift at the time. Then Pico came around. There was kind of always Steam for PC VR, and for a while, I guess. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other platforms have come up, like PSVR 2, obviously. But the
A
reality
couple
is,
generations of Pico that have been out there, yeah.
yeah, a couple generations of Pico. Vision Pro, was another one that came out. And every single time there's been a new platform, we have taken the time to kind of look into it. Our take on a lot of this stuff is you don't you don't have to be first to be the best. We actually weren't the first to get a full kind of 18-hole full swing golf solution out there. There was another app called, and there still is another app called Golf 5 that came out a couple months before we released Golf Plus, and they had full course golf, and people were playing it and everything like that. And they just kind of beat us to the punch by a couple months, and then we released, and thankfully we're able to convert a lot of those players, and kind of quickly rose to the top there. So that's kind of a similar attitude that we have towards like these other platforms. Is I would much rather wait and see how it's working for other developers, and try to understand what that market looks like and what some of the pitfalls are. And oftentimes when you're first, you're kind of paying a bit of a fee to run into a lot of the issues that are going to come up, and you're going to be the first one to run into it. And there's not documentation or even now AI to kind of answer those questions because you're the first to have it happen. So you pay this fee, and generally it's going to be slower than it is in the future when people have run into those issues and they've been solved. So we kind of prefer to wait and see how the market is doing and what sales are looking like, and asking devs if, like, knowing what they know now, do you think it makes sense to prioritize, and factoring that into our decision. And up until this year, we've always decided we would rather prioritize speed and adding features and adding courses and refining our existing software versus expanding to other platforms. When you expand, there's just a cost to every platform that you add. It takes QA time. We have a pretty thorough QA process before we release any updates. So QA has to test on all these different devices. You're going to run into different issues on different devices. It's just going to take time to kind of port. Every time you build a new feature in certain situations, you might have to adapt it in different ways to these different devices. So for all those reasons, we decided we're just going to stay focused on Quest and focus on speed and focus on making the product as good as it possibly can be. And then kind of wait until it makes sense to port. And we decided that this year that the timing did make sense, and rather than add more and more new features to Golf Plus and have it stay exclusive to Quest, we would add support for other platforms, starting with Steam.
So what are the mechanics of the subscription for, if I'm a Quest user and I wanna switch to Steam Frame, is it how do I sign up for a subscription? And does the subscription do you expect the subscription just to carry right over? I'm gonna be able to just log in on day 1 with Steam Frame and continue, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's exactly what our intent is. We look at, stuff like Netflix as kind of a great example of how it should work. We like the idea of having one Golf Plus account that tracks whether you're subscribed or not. And we already have this built even for Quest. Like right now, it doesn't really matter because it's only on Quest, so you're not using it elsewhere. But one Golf Plus account that you can log into on your Quest, that you could log into on Steam, that you'd be able to log into on other platforms that we support in the future. Our back end is kind of keeping track of whether you're a subscriber or not. Obviously, if you ended up subscribing on Quest, then, Meta's gonna get their cut because that's where you subscribed from, versus if you subscribe on, in the future on Valve, and they would kinda get their cut of the subscription. But from a usage perspective, you'd be able to have access to all the benefits on either platform. So, yeah, we're gonna keep it, one subscription should get you access on all platforms.
Can you what what is that a restriction on you as the developer that you've gotta use the platform's tools to log in? Because I mean, this is a I can't purchase Steam games when I'm using Steam Link on my Vision Pro. I can't, Netflix, I can't purchase books from Amazon unless I go to the website for Amazon and then the book, you know, populates inside my Kindle app. There's these very strict lines on where the platforms sort of demand their cut. And I'm is there not a solution where you can just have people sign up on your own website, you keep 100% of the revenue, and people then log in on their platform of choice?
Yeah, 100%. And we are planning to offer that as an option as well, where you could go to golfplusvr.com and sign up for the subscription there and create your account there, and then we wouldn't have to do the rev share. There are some caveats that, these are just the rules from the platforms, and like the reality is I think Apple kind of created all these rules initially with the App Store, and every other new platform that's come out since then has effectively just copied Apple's policies. So the deal is from within the platform that you're using. So if someone launches Golf Plus on Quest, we we can offer subscription, but it has to be going through the Quest store, right? So if someone signs up from within Golf Plus on Quest, that has to go through Meta. If someone wants to sign up for the Golf Plus Pass while they're on a Steam device, that has to go through Valve. If someone wants to go to our website and do it, then it doesn't have to go through either of those sources. But if they're in the app that's running on the device, say hypothetically we had an iPhone app for this as well. If someone wanted to sign up for Golf Plus Pass on iPhone, it would have an Apple subscription, and Apple would get, their 30% versus Meta getting theirs versus Valve getting theirs. So those are the rules. And then the one other rule is that the price of the subscription can't be cheaper anywhere else. So
Mm.
you can do introductory offers and sales, and there are like a few ways to get around it, or do promotions anyway. But like we couldn't offer subscription for, $20 on our website, but it's $30 in the app. They have to be like $30 everywhere. So obviously from a, if you're a customer, you're going to generally go down the path of least resistance unless there's like a financial reason not to. So if the prices are the same everywhere and you're already in the Golf Plus app on Quest, like you're going to subscribe there. So that's hopefully that kind of explains
It
it all.
does. It does, yeah, that's gonna be hugely helpful for a lot of people out there that are trying to grasp the mechanics of the market. The theme of some of my reporting and some of my analysis is just that, uh people were interested in VR for decades. There's research going back many decades at this point of just the idea, and it's been a honing thing over the years of just getting closer and closer to products and things actually people want to buy in large numbers. And then you have 2012 roll around, and you get this sort of model for lightweight, relatively wide field of view optics that everyone sort of gloms onto and builds head mounted displays around. But what ends up happening from 2012 to 2014, 2016 is these platforms get built up in front of the enthusiasts who are just passionately trying to discover what is good here. And those platforms have been like a blessing and a curse in different ways at different times. I covered it a little bit with Doug North Cook in my opening podcast, mm, for Good Virtual Reality. And with you, it seems like it's been very helpful, the Quest ecosystem for launching this idea. What I always wonder about is how do you not become too reliant on these platforms? How do you not tie your fate to the platform overall. And that's sort of the underlying theme of why I wanted to chat with you, of what I was hoping to cover in this podcast is just what those two rules right there of not being able to charge less and making it and giving the cut to the platform. Yeah, I've seen a lot of different companies playing games almost with those rules. Epic filed its lawsuits on this exact same sort of issue. And for users, right, you said that users just want to go down the path of least resistance. I love that. It's true. But also, like, logging into an account once you're inside of a VR headset is madness, right? So, like, you're into a headset and now you've got to look up your password outside of a headset. And, like, there's people that are working on solutions to that. You know, you get an email with a magic link and that gets you in and that sort of thing. But overall, it's just really hard to stack users and to stack recurring users. And it seems like Golf Plus is a leader here. Would you disagree with that label? Are you not a leader here in sort of stacking recurring users? And what advice would you have for others on how to do the same?
Yeah, that's a great it's a great question, and I think you brought up a ton of really great points that I totally agree with. VR UX, I'm sure in the future we'll look back at this time and be like, "Wow, that was pretty rough." It's far from frictionless. There's so many trade-offs. I mean, typing isn't even enjoyable. There's no great input method. It is pretty remarkable that it's even come as far as it has. But one of the things that we really do try to prioritize is our kind of UX and creating an Apple-like experience that reduces friction for our customers as much as humanly possible. Some of that is it's a bit of a trade-off between creating this frictionless experience, but also making sure that we can retain our users. And a simple example of that is when you first get Golf Plus and you go through our onboarding tutorial experience, we obviously teach you the controls and stuff like that. But before we even do a lot of that, we ask you a bunch of questions. We have we call it the Heidi How. How do you hear about us? We ask how you heard about us, whether you're a golfer or not, what you typically shoot if you're a golfer, how often you play, a bunch of these questions that help us kind of understand a little bit better, who you are and how into golf are you. And then we also ask you for your email. It's optional. You don't have to provide it, but we ask you for your email because if we don't do that, then we really don't have a way of communicating with you once you've taken the headset off, which is a serious problem from the perspective of retention. If you look at mobile apps and web apps and everything like that, part of the reason they're so effective with retention, or at least the good ones, is they keep a constant line of communication with their customers. So that was a change that we added a while ago. Now, we have a list of hundreds of thousands of emails from these users that we're able to send updates to and let them know every time a new feature is out or a new course is out, or let them know if one of their friends have now logged into Golf Plus for the first time, and hopefully that re-engages them. So thinking about, how we can communicate with our players after they've taken the headset off has been something tremendously valuable to us. And I think that's part of why our retention is generally pretty good. We also introduced the subscription product, and one of the obviously subscriptions are not for everybody. I totally get it. I have way more subscriptions for different products than I wish I had. But as a business operator, one of the huge benefits of subscription is not just the recurring revenue aspect, it's the fact that people who subscribe and kind of make that, payment up front, they are far more likely to keep using the product as well. Once you've subscribed for something, you almost feel like you have somewhat of an obligation to use it as much as possible during that subscription period. And we found that that's actually had a massive impact on retention. I mean, there's obviously a huge bias there, but the people who subscribe are far more likely to play the game, almost 10 times as much as the people who don't over that like first month period. And a number of things like that. We have a data team here, a couple data analysts on our team. We're constantly looking at the numbers. We're constantly understanding the correlation between what people do in their very first day versus the first 3 days versus the first 7 days. And then, what that looks like by day 28. Are there certain actions that we can try to get people to do in the first few days that increases the odds that they're going to be around by day 28? So we've definitely we're trying to take the guesswork out and trying to kind of back it up with data, but also really just trying to create a great product that delivers on what people are looking for. And for our product in particular, it's a golf. We really look at it almost more of a golf simulation than like a golf game even. It's like you can play golf in your house. It's simulating the sport of golf. And about a third of our users are buying a headset just to play Golf Plus. That's the primary reason they got it, is so they could play Golf Plus because they heard about it from a friend or they saw, an ad or they heard about it in some other way. And these are not VR enthusiasts. In many cases, these aren't even gamers, right? These are just people who want to play golf in their house. So it's kind of forced us to build as simple a UX as possible, recognizing that these are not like necessarily tech savvy people or people who even understand like buttons on controllers and stuff like that. So given that's kind of who our audience is and who we think our audience will be going forward, it's just sort of forced us to look at every single step of our process and see if we can make it even simpler.
I love that. That's so helpful. I hope there's a lot of people in the audience out there sort of taking notes there on all those points that seem obvious to a sort of a business person, but also like not every dev is a business person. They're learning on the fly how to kind of hone their product, and so I think all of those points really bring home uh, why you're finding this user base. And I think it's so fascinating to hear things like what did you say? A third of your users only play your game. Is that what you?
They bought the headset to play Golf Plus, and the reason that we know that number is because that's another question that we asked during our kinda onboarding survey is like, "Did you buy the headset to play Golf Plus?"
Yeah. So let me get philosophical here for a minute. Just that fact, that little data point is one of the ones that I kind of hear regarding these long-standing platform, like these long-standing games that have been around here for a long time. And that data point is one of the reasons why I believe VR is never going to go away. If you think about all the people across the planet that all have a different sort of hobby or thing that they love to do in reality, flight sims, car sims, we sometimes ignore these as like tentpole productions in VR, but Microsoft Flight Simulator, Elite Dangerous, Gran Turismo, these things are recreating the feeling of something that people spend millions of dollars to enjoy. Like a plane can cost you that much money. It's extraordinary expense and challenge to maintain. And now you've got this tool that lets you sort of practice when you don't when you're not out on the field, so to speak, when you're not actually near the hardware that lets you do those things. And uh it's this is one of the reasons, like when you start stacking up all those different hobbies, flying, driving cars, golfing, going to the gun range, bowling, and like you can go down the list here of different things. You just arrive at like you've got a very small number of people who are willing to wear a very heavy headset for more than a couple hours of time to do this thing that they love. But the reason the medium is like here to stay is the weight is going to go down. The resolution is going to go up. Like all of the technical barriers there are just about scale, of scaling the production and decreasing the size of the pixels and things like that. So it's like each year you get to invite more people to overcome that barrier, that the weight barrier, the resolution barrier. And they find that there's already this hobby is already alive in this space and they're ready to get into it. I'll go off on another tangent here and just what if VR is so large as a space for people in the future that it's requiring platforms to be cutthroat about those policies, like the policies we discussed already. And those policies actually, like, they protect the platform, but they make it harder for these hobbyists to find their hobby across all platforms. The core example here is uh, a Steam Frame player playing against a Quest player. It was one of the reasons that this exact thing that I'm describing is one of the reasons I put so much time into covering Walkabout Mini Golf when I was at Upload VR. Um, it was it was a game that I could tell people you can go and get this on your headset of choice. You don't have to go get a specific headset in order to enjoy it. So if you philosophically have some problem with Meta, you've got other choices in front of you to go and get that. I haven't been able to do that for Golf Plus until now that you guys are actually going to move off of the Quest platform this year. And I think like I don't think I'm alone here in sort of being resistant to kind of like buying into something when it's just one company championing it and there's just one solution to it and you have to not only you have to get every one of your friends to buy into that same solution. You don't have that's not true anymore. That's starting to change when you've got multi-platform support and multiple options to pick from. Yeah, anything you want to say in response to that? Because I've talked in a couple different directions, but it's almost like I feel whenever see people talking about augmented reality, optical see through, none of that technology is going to help with presence and simulation that is going to take me out onto the greens at Augusta or Pebble Beach and actually feel like I'm there and watching and golfing. So like I just think that one of the things so you have a big company like Meta that is supporting and throwing money at this problem. But ultimately, like, it can't just be one company owning this space. It's almost like Apple and Valve and Google are so competitive that they're like, you have to build a layer like OpenXR there at the very core foundational layer to get some kind of interoperability so you can have some kind of app that launches on multiple things. But like, let me flip this around before you speak and talk about something else here subscription versus buying the courses, for example. There's so many things that like that I try to think about the analogy of VR to the real world. You essentially have a country club. Your subscription is pretty close to what a country club is. And yet your country club gives access to some of the most popular like exclusive courses in the world at a moment's notice. You're bottling up something that costs typically thousands or tens of $1,000s to enjoy into this little monthly fee that gives you an enormous amount of that value and like it's even a taster for actually going and experiencing it. I imagine you've got people that are practicing on your courses in the weeks before they actually go out to the real course in order to get a lay of the land. Um, and it's all like uh, I've had this model in the back of my mind of like why isn't there a VR game that costs $100 or $150? And why can't I purchase that game once and then host my own servers, like peer to peer style? Where, like, hey, you want to come out to this golf course? I'm going to run my server and I'm going to use my $150 copy of this game, and you can come to my server and play my game with me, or something like that. Like, where I'm going with that is, like, you said something really powerful of, like, it's more than a game, and it's the theme of what I talked, with many devs about, where you've got, like, so many constraining principles upon what you're trying to do. You have to use a controller instead of a golf club, and there's people who are attaching golf club handles to the controller in order to give themselves a little bit of immersion. But then you have to press the menu button that's on the controller at the end of your putter in order to exit the menu. So it's all these things are, you said it already. The user experience, we're going to look back on this time and laugh because of how bad the user experience is. But what the overall theme of this whole section of what I'm trying to say is that it's almost like VR is such a large space that these companies are crowding around one another and making, like, they're all rushing in and trying to cut off the things that they want to be the one true provider of. And that's just not going to be the case. Like, it's going to be a wide, it's such a wide space. Everyone is going to be using it eventually. But first, the sort of like the rails need to be put down for everyone else to get from place to place inside VR. And yeah, I want to hear you speak to everything I've said just a little bit.
Sure, yeah. No, there's a lot to cover there. Yeah, so I think we're at a very interesting point in the world of VR. I mean, I think if you take it all the way back to the very basics, hey, I've got this thing, I've got this like I don't know, pound device, pound and a half device, whatever that I want you to strap to your face. That's a pretty big ask. I want you to put this like kind of uncomfortable thing on your face for a couple hours. And it's like, well, why the hell would I do that?
And you got to log into an account first. You
Right,
got to
but I
set
mean,
up an account. You all
even just
those things. Yeah.
physically, let's say like people don't even know what VR is. They have no idea like what's going to happen when you strap it to your face. Just the concept of like, I want you to put this uncomfortable thing on your face is such a big ask that it better deliver something incredibly magical. And I know it can be pretty easy to kind of get down on VR right now because we've just been through so many ebbs and flows. And like for a minute, it looked like things were great. And now it's a little bit more challenging. But the fact that millions of people are willing to put this thing on their face, this like multi-pound thing on their face and spend hours in it means that we really do have something pretty incredible. I mean, what else could this thing offer that would have you put something on your face like that? Like there's really nothing else like it in the world that you would consider doing. The only other kind of example of it would be like you put a helmet on when you're riding a motorcycle because you don't want to die, right? Like that's like maybe the best analogy of putting something that kind of bulky on your head. But the point is there's an incredibly magical experience once you actually get into it. And there are a handful of apps out there that have really cracked that open that get people really excited and interested and engaged. And for some people, I think, we're one of them. And for us, it really comes down to finding stuff that people are already doing in the real world. I think you made this point earlier. Finding stuff that people already want to do in the real world and then just trying to make it a much simpler, easier, less expensive way of doing that, more convenient way of doing that from the comfort of their home. That to me is an extremely interesting and I think kind of proven business model where if you can take something people already want to do and you can make it cheaper and easier and more convenient, then there's a real opportunity there. And that's also how we think about our subscription. I think you kind of likened it to a country club. I definitely think that's true in some ways, but the interesting thing about a golf country club is it really generally only gets you access to like one golf course and the people that play at that one golf course, which is great. And people spend, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on some of these memberships, which is like, definitely out of reach for most golfers. For us, we wanted to make the subscription Honestly, just like kind of as much of a no-brainer as possible. The reason that we decided to offer the subscription, for one thing, is we offered it when we had, I think, probably about a dozen courses, and we made the promise that the year after we introduced the subscription, we were going to launch at least 15 courses in that year. And if you wanted to buy every single one of those courses, each course was about $10. So you were going to spend $150 to buy all of those courses. Or you could subscribe for $80 a year or $10 a month, both of which would be cheaper than buying every course. Plus, you get access to the dozen that already existed. Now we're a few years in and we have, 50 courses, basically 50 courses that you could buy. Plus, we'll be, releasing at least another dozen this year. So, in order to buy all of those courses, you'd be spending, $600 by the end of the year. Or on a monthly basis, you could spend just $10, or on a yearly basis, our introductory offer is like $50. So for $50, you could get access to all those courses, or you could buy them all for $600. For us, the subscription again is just creating a simpler solution so that it's just a more affordable way to play any of the courses that we have. And as the library gets bigger, the value of the subscription continues to go up. And as I kind of mentioned before, for basically every VR experience, and I guess you could probably say almost every business, it pretty much all comes down to the lifetime value of your customer. How much money is the average customer going to spend on with your business over their lifetime? And you look at that and then you look at, okay, and now what's the customer acquisition cost? How much does it cost to actually acquire a customer through various marketing efforts, potentially through development efforts, through building new features, things like that. And you have to make that math work out where the lifetime value is higher than the cost to acquire a customer so that the business makes some money and you can pay your employees and grow and do whatever. So subscription is important, but what's kind of more important is unless you want to make all of your money up front and charge a bunch, a one-time payment, like pay $100 for this app or $500 for this app or whatever, and try to kind of capture all of that value right at the start. If you're not going to do that, then you basically need retention. You need people to keep coming back to your experience and keep creating value for them so that they do come back, so that they will keep spending money and supporting the product and increasing that, lifetime value. And a lot of the free to play experiences that are out there now are kind of perfect examples of this. They capture no value up front. It's completely free. You go in there and the app's free. There's no value captured up front. But if they get you to stick around and retain and you keep playing it, and then they have these DLCs or cosmetics or whatever that create value for you over time, if you can get people to keep coming back, then over time, a lot of those people are going to want to kind of up level their experience and stand out or just enhance the experience in some way. And they'll be willing to, spend money to do that. So from our perspective, almost all of it comes back to retention and how can we get people to keep playing Golf Plus? How can we just keep creating value for these people so that they will come back and keep playing the experience, tell their friends about it, hopefully become subscribers or buy courses, but just keep going and keep going and keep going. So hopefully that kind of answers the subscription
Mm,
question. On the platform side, I 100% hear what you're saying on the walkabout side. I think they took a little bit of a different path than us, and they did end up porting to the various headsets pretty early on, and I think it's worked out, quite well for them. From our perspective, it really just came down to the fact that based on talking to other developers, it seemed like consistently, other than a few counterexamples, about 80% of the revenue was coming from Meta. And our
mm.
goal has always been to keep our team as small as possible and stay as lean as possible. VR does have a lot of ups and downs. When things are going well, it can be pretty easy to kind of start hiring a bunch of people and growing too fast. But the reality is, things can go the other way. and it's a lot easier to hire people than it is to fire people and do layoffs, and we've kinda operated under this idea that we never wanna do any layoffs, and if that means we're just not gonna, grow as fast and grow our team as fast, like, that's the trade-off that we're willing to take. So for us, it was about staying focused on the one platform and trying to prioritize the features that would increase retention and engagement as much as possible, and kind of setting some baseline metrics for that. How many people become subscribers? How many people, are still playing after day 7 and day 28? And we figured, we would keep adding features and keep adding courses and keep working on it and seeing those numbers improve. And we figured while we're able to improve those numbers and create kind of a healthier business and create a higher LTV for every one of our customers, we should keep doing that. And then once we start to see some diminishing returns there, then it kind of makes sense for us to port because we've already proven to ourselves that we've kind of created, the most value that we can. And like we might as well do that when this existing platform is kind of 80% of the market, knowing that we're like leaving some money on the table and not having a solution for some folks that do want to play, but also recognizing that like we can port over to these new platforms at any time. The longer we wait, the better the experience is going to be when we port. But porting in many ways is kind of a one-way door. So once you port, in my opinion, you're obligated to support that. So if you port and people have problems with that platform, or there are, certain issues that come up that are platform specific or whatever, as a developer and as a company trying to build a brand with credibility and quality at the heart, we take a lot of pride in our customer service and that kind of a thing. So if we're going to take the time to port, then we have to be willing to invest as much time as necessary to ensure that the experience on these different platforms is as good as possible. And if we can't do that and we don't want to grow the team to do that, then we just shouldn't port, and we should leave that money and opportunity where it is until we're kind of at a point where we're ready. And this is the first year where we have felt like the core experience is good enough, the retention is good enough, the engagement is good enough. We're kind of ready to bring this to more people on different platforms.
Mhm.
Plus, Steam Frame is coming out, which is super interesting to us. And, last year Meta didn't come out with the new headset, and based on rumors, it looks like this year might be the same. So now feels like a really good time for us to kind of take everything that we've learned and bring it to new platforms. Not to mention with the advancements in AI from a developer perspective, and the fact that so many other developers have ported, a lot of the gotchas that the first set of developers ran into when they were initially porting, so many, so there's so much documentation, there's so many threads out there, there's so many devs that have kind of already gone through the work of porting, that it's been a lot easier for us to reach out to them, to read, docs and stuff online to see what issues, you might run into, and then to utilize AI to help us come up with a great plan to port that I think has probably saved us like either, close to 2x or 4x the amount of time that it would have like even a year ago.
So I think we're getting close to the end of this conversation. There's a few questions I want to end on that I'm going to make a habit of doing on the podcast. But I wanted to ask one question before I get to those questions about one more question about the economics here of just trying to understand why this is so darn difficult to get people to connect and play these things together. I've got last weekend I wrote about doing a double feature on a Saturday night in a Quest in a movie theater here in New York. I went to see Insidious with more than a dozen other people also in Quests and got a little bit of the social experience of, hearing them react a little bit while I'm also reacting to the movie. Then I came home and I put on the Vision Pro and I had a remote friend also in a Vision Pro watch the Bone Temple, 28 years later, the Bone Temple. And we had like a little discussion at the start of it of like, which theater do we want to go into? Do we want to use the environment that looks kind of like a cinema, or do we want to go out to Jupiter and set an eclipsed Jupiter behind us, so it's a completely black void behind our movie screen, and we decided on that. And we watched this great horror movie for more than 2 hours immediately after I sort of did the opposite experience in a Quest in a physical theater. And the thing about that is that the economics there are kind of weird. It was maybe less than $20 for my ticket for this experimental thing in a Quest in the theater. And then for the Vision Pro, where obviously I've spent $3,500, my friend has spent that amount. So we're $7,000 in hardware. And then we each have to buy the movie or rent the movie. He has to rent the movie for $20. I bought the movie for 25. So now we're $50 in almost on software on content. Um to have this shared experience where he doesn't leave his home, I don't leave my home, and we're now watching a movie. And just even finding the time where we're both willing to put on the headset at the same time in our week is an extraordinary task where there's a blizzard coming in to our region, and he's got to deal with house preparations for the blizzard. And I've got my own things to do. And so, like, even the two people who have this particular hardware have to schedule and find 2.5 hours in each of their schedules to wear this weighty thing. And it's 40 or 50 bucks on top of that. So like I look at those all those mechanics. There's plenty of people who have bought Vision Pro and then don't go and sign up for Apple Arcade or for Apple TV. They are not interested in those subscription programs and the monthly cost. Now, Apple appears to be stacking a lot of value into those subscriptions over time. Reported on Retrocade is a really cool arcade experience in Apple Arcade. And then on Apple TV, you've got all these amazing shows that are building up. Some of the best sci-fi I've seen in years has been locked within this Apple TV subscription. But again, Apple TV, Apple Arcade do not exist on Steam. So I can't have a friend who just happens to be a Steam Frame user or a PC VR user and then come and watch that movie with me, or like even the stuff that Apple produces for All Mankind or Foundation. Like, because Apple TV doesn't exist on another platform like that, I can't get into a shared experience because FaceTime isn't on that other platform. I can't get into a share play experience where we're watching a movie together unless I've got the one friend who has spent this amount of money. And so what I'm just describing here is this enormous difficulty to have shared experiences with people who might share the same interests. It's just extraordinarily difficult. And golf, right? It's this weekend activity that so many people, it's so similar in a way to just VR use overall. People plan their whole week around getting ready for that weekend, the afternoon out on the golf course. VR is very similar to that kind of behavior. So all this is to say, like, you're faced with a choice of expanding platforms. I think you've probably made the right choice in going into Steam. You're going to launch, it's going to be on PC VR and Steam Frame is the intention, right?
Yes.
So it's both standalone. And so you're also going to open yourselves up to potentially a Google. I imagine a Google port wouldn't be too hard after doing an Android port on Steam Frame. There could be a lot of other Android XR based headsets in a couple years that you could expand to. But I want to understand why it doesn't make sense when Apple launches PSVR to 2 controller support and you have these users who are ready to spend lots of money on their content and their hardware, but, like, it still doesn't make sense for you, Golf Plus, to put it on the Vision Pro because of all these other mechanics that I'm talking about, right? Like, what I'm trying to, like, write in my head is you talk about adult users being sort of drawn to golf, existing golfers being drawn to Golf Plus. I imagine there's a non-zero number of executives and golfers who own Vision Pros, who went and bought Vision Pro, why that wouldn't be like more than the people who are going to get Steam Frame. Like, I don't know. I want to understand why the markets are the way that they are this way. Like why it doesn't make sense for Vision Pro, but does make sense for PCVR.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to the number of active users, right? So, I mean, we've talked to a number of devs that are on Vision Pro and have developed different Vision Pro apps, including the PGA Tour has an official Vision Pro app that they launched like release. Based on the numbers that we're seeing there, and that doesn't even include like requiring a controller and having these PSVR2 controllers, which like you can't, the last I checked, you can't even
It's a
buy
subset of the users. Yeah.
you can't even buy the controllers alone. You have to actually buy the whole PSVR 2 and get the controllers that way. When sort of try to do the math on like what those numbers look like, I think if we were incredibly lucky, we'd sell like maybe 1,000 copies, right?
More likely 10 or 15. Yeah. Fair. I mean, I
Maybe,
get that.
maybe,
Yeah.
like, maybe, to maybe 10 or 15, but, like, I don't even know if 10 or 15 have ever connected their controllers to Apple Vision Pro in the first place, you know what I mean? So, like, I think it would be just such a small number, um, and then, again, we have to support it, right? We have to support that, so I would our philosophy is try to do as few things as possible and just do them incredibly well. And I'm totally fine not getting those 1,000 or even 10,000 incremental users in the near term so that we can make the product better for our, existing hundreds of thousands of monthly actives that are using it now and all of our subscribers and stuff. I'm totally fine waiting until, the platform has evolved and, you know, Apple's supposedly working on the next Vision Pro, Vision Pro Air or Vision Air, whatever, like whatever that ends up being, it might have completely different requirements. I have no idea. So we could kind of do all this work to get it working on Vision Pro and find out that like there's a whole new way to do it for whatever the next platform is. Maybe that one doesn't even have controller support. I think my philosophy and I guess what I would even recommend a lot of VR developers do is like try to do the least that you can. Try to just really focus on getting the core thing as good as possible. And if if you can't get your business to work on Meta that has millions of active headsets, it's probably not going to work on another platform
Mhm.
unless you're going for a very kind of niche product that's very expensive or something like that, or you just, maybe yeah, generating revenue is not as important for you. There are definitely plenty of hobbyists out there, which is totally fine. But if you actually want to create a business, I think it is really important how many active users there are on that platform and getting to a platform. Getting there early doesn't guarantee anything. I think there's this kind of misconception that like you want to be the first on the platform to do this thing. And I really don't think that's the case. Most consumers, you know, most most consumers, they're gonna buy the headset and they're gonna look on the store for, like, the best app that does XYZ. They're not gonna look for the first app that did XYZ. So, you can learn a lot by not being first and kinda learning from the folks that are first and learning from those that do it and avoiding those pitfalls and stuff like that. And then once you feel like you can create a great experience and you're gonna get enough users to justify it, then absolutely, absolutely go after it. But for us, just based on everything that we've seen and talking to some other devs, like Vision Pro is just not going to generate any revenue and it's going to be quite a bit of work to kind of get things working correctly.
Yep.
So we'd much rather focus our efforts in other ways that are going to reach more people. And I'm sure at some point Apple is going to have I mean, the Vision Pro is already an incredible device, but they're gonna have a device that just fits our needs a little bit better, where we can create a great experience without doing a ton of heavy lifting. And when that time comes, we'll definitely be ready for it.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. That's so helpful. All right. So the final questions here are: can you tell me what your first experience with VR was?
Yeah, wow, actually, that's a good one. So I went to Virginia Tech. I graduated in like 2007. I got like an undergrad degree in computer science, but I took a graduate class on it was called immersive environments, and this is in 2007, like long before, DK1 or anything like that. And I got to try a couple different super interesting VR experiences. The first was a head-mounted display that was literally bolted to the ceiling because it weighed, you know, 60 pounds or whatever. And I think it was like 640 by 480 resolution. And the experience that I tried was a virtual snake to like show that it can help you get over fears. And I mean, it was, the pixels were like half an inch big, right? It was ridiculous. But it functioned and you could stand there and kind of move your head around. I think it was 3 DOF probably, and like not super immersive, but kind of interesting. And I was like, eh. And then the other one that I tried that was incredibly compelling was something called a cave. And the way the cave works is you're basically inside a kind of like 10 by 10 cube, but in this case, the top of the cube is gone and the back of the cube is gone. And all the walls, the sort of three walls in front of you are all rear projected, and the floor below you is top down projected. And then you wear active stereo glasses so that you see something different out of each eye, and you're standing inside of this immersive environment. And it does head tracking and everything like that so that it can sync the views and everything. And it is incredibly immersive. The super cool thing about it is because it's these active glasses with the projectors, you can see your hands, but you can also see the virtual content. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So incredible for presence. And the first experience I tried in there, I'm trying to think what it was. I don't remember what the first experience I tried was, but I actually ended up staying at the university for another year after I graduated to work on a project. And I worked on a coal safety mining training program where coal mining is incredibly dangerous, and they have these big conveyor belt systems where like people die every year because these machines are just so massive and dangerous and blah blah blah, that they wanted to develop this VR based safety program where you could go and train and get close up to the conveyor belts and stuff like that, obviously without getting hurt. So I stayed on for a year and worked on that project. And I was in that cave area, like, almost every day of the week for about a year. And that, yeah,
Mm,
that was seven. So that was
I love it.
very preview.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So in 2012, I did two demos. I went out to Disney Imagineering, had a cave set up where they were showing virtual Cars Land. So I think that was the same year that Cars Land opened. And they basically offered us this PR opportunity to come out and see the Imagineering cave where you put on the little head tracking hat and you've got the 3D glasses and you're able to move your head around. And you just nailed it. I put an article out called Vision Pro is an augmented virtual reality headset. It seems to me like Apple engineered a bunch of the tech that you get out of a cave into the Vision Pro. So, like looking down and seeing your arms, you described it perfectly. That's what Vision Pro does out of the box for across all experiences. So, very interesting. The reason I bring that up is I did that demo, and then a couple months later, the hype starts building for the Oculus program, and I go and try the duct tape demo at Oculus offices local to me in Orange County. And what I saw between these two demos was just within the span of 6 months, having both of these demos back to back, here is this technology, a cave that is really, really close to my dream of a holodeck. But you look at things like redirected walking and the expense of the projecting systems and the absurdity of having a room that you have to dedicate to this endeavor, right? Like all these things that just say, okay, the cave is not going to be a consumer, like no one's going to experience this except inside of research labs like this one for another 50, 70 years. And then you go or I went to this Oculus, duct tape demo, and I'm looking around and going, "Wait, you're gonna be targeting the hundreds of dollars, and this is all I need?" Like, it just showed me that VR was not on the 70 to 90-year timescale of the cave. It showed me that an HMD could get there in a fraction of the time. And here we are a little bit over a decade on from that, and Apple went and stuck a bunch of that cave technology inside of the Vision Pro. And now 2 years on from that, it's almost like Meta is realizing that Apple has set the minimum viable product exactly where it needs to be. It needed to have those things from the cave inside of our VR experience in order for it to be as compelling as it possibly can be. So that's just, I love that you brought up the context of the cave, and it's surprising. I wish more people had the opportunity to see a cave so that they could understand it. And I still have dreams in the back of my mind. What happens when we get a cave up to 90 frames per second or 120 frames per second, and you blast 8K projectors all around it? What is that experience like? I'm desperate for having that one at some point. All right. So last question here is, can you describe for me your favorite moment of presence inside of virtual reality?
Oh man, that's a good one. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Man, it's so hard to pick a favorite, but okay, so I have a pretty good favorite. I would say one of my first social experiences in VR was like very eye-opening to me. And unfortunately, I forgot the name of the game, but it was before 11 table tennis launched. It was the other ping pong game where you're like kind of playing as robots. I don't remember if you remember the name of that one.
Oh, yeah, I do know what you're talking about. I
You
have
know
to
what I'm
think
talking
of
about?
its name
Before
here.
11, and then 11 came around and, like, basically took over that market, but anyway, it was a ping pong game, and I decided to do multiplayer and got paired with this random guy. I think it was actually on Christmas, back in, like, 2019 probably, and, we played a game of ping pong together, and yeah, just vividly remember, like, interacting with this guy and talking to him and, hitting the shots and everything like that, and it was just, like, amazing, like, wow, I feel like I was there with him. And then the next one that was, like,
Racket
similar
Fury.
but the
Is
first
Racket
one.
Fury that?
No, it wasn't Racket Fury. This was actually ping pong. So I'll have to look it up. I feel bad that I don't remember the name of it, but 11 table tennis just obviously dominated after that. But this was like a legitimate ping pong game. It was like a bit more arcadey. And then the other one that I had that was just kind of like sort of mind blowing was I got to play Golf Plus. We had Pebble Beach, and I got to play Pebble Beach multiplayer with Mark Wahlberg. So we're out there, and it was his first ever VR experience, and he's in there, and I'm in there, and we're talking to each other, and he's just, like, going crazy, like, mind blown, like, "You gotta be kidding me. I played this course so many times, like, you got that right, you got that right," like, hitting shots, teaching him how to do mulligans, and then immediately getting into, like, kinda just golf banter and trash talking each other and having a great time, and it was just so cool to see, a celebrity for one thing. I'd never met him in real life, but meeting a celebrity in that way and then seeing him experience VR for the first time and seeing him experience Golf Plus for the first time, and then him just very quickly, going from all this kind of new technology and getting familiarized to very quickly getting into the golf banter and just feeling like we're playing around the golf together. And it was just such a kind of surreal, cool experience to do that
Wow.
with
Yeah,
someone.
that is a great example of presence in VR. So thank you for sharing that, Ryan. Thank you for the conversation today. Um, yeah, I hope to talk to you more in the future, and I can't wait to see and test and play a Golf Plus on PC VR. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. So good luck this year. Thank you for the time.
Thanks so much, Ian. Thanks for having me on.